What's up, guys? I'm back again. This is my second video on literal equations. The previous video we touched on the basics. We're gonna go a little bit in depth now and solve a bit more complex questions. Okay, let's get into it. Okay, so they give us the area of a triangle, right? And they say the area of a triangle is equal to half base times height, right? So they now ask us, what is the height of the triangle in terms of its base and in terms of its area, okay? What is the height of the triangle in terms of the base and the area, right? So if we know that the area of the triangle equals half base times height, we want to now isolate the height, right? Which is this h over here, okay? So how do we do that? Let me just write it over without this front part, so we can just write it like this more simply. Area equals a half base times height, okay? If you want to, you can make this look easier for you, and you could say A equals a half multiplied by B multiplied by H, okay? This is the same thing. Alright, so we want to isolate the H. How do we do that? Okay, we know that a half times base times height is gonna be a half base height, okay? As shown in the previous one here, okay? A half base height. That's basically what that means. If we were to multiply all three of these unknowns, it would be a half base height, right? So we want to isolate the h, okay? So what can we do? We can divide both sides, okay? We can divide both sides of the equation by a half base, okay? And the other side, we're going to divide by a half base, okay? So this whole thing is going to cancel, right? A half base on the denominator and a half base on the numerator, okay? So what am I left with? I know this looks a bit all over the place, but what I'm left with on the left hand side, I'm gonna rewrite it. I'm actually left with area divided by a half, a half base, okay? I'm actually left with area divided by a half base. And what am I left with now? I just found now my h, okay? Isolated, okay? But remember, we can work with this still, okay? I'm just going to rearrange the sum, and I'm going to say h. I'm going to put h on the left-hand side. I'm going to write it as is, just with h on the left-hand side. So h, which is height, equals area divided by a half base, okay? I hope we all following. So you guys know the rule, okay, which you've learned in primary school. When we have this scenario, we can easily say that area times 2 over b. Okay, what did I do? Remember, the b belongs to the numerator. Okay, so I flipped the fraction. I took the b down and I brought the 2 up. So what I'm actually sitting with is that height equals area multiplied by 2 over b, which therefore gives me 2a over b. Okay, and that's your solution. Right? I hope we all followed that. Let's go to the next sum, okay? So I'm going to give you another one, and this one is a little bit more complicated, okay? So in this one, we are given a formula again. The formula reads h equals r times h over r plus r squared, okay? This is a bit more difficult. Why? Because they're now asking us to make are the subject. Okay? And now you're asking me, whoa, sir, how do we do this? How do I now make are the subject of the formula? Because this is a bit more tricky, because here's a R and here's a R. This is difficult, okay? But don't worry, we're going to get through it, okay? Let's rewrite it on a new page. So I'm going to rewrite that formula again. So it was H equals R times H over R plus R squared. Okay. So here's the tricky thing. They want us to make R the subject of the formula. And we're sitting with two R's, okay? Let's get into it. So we know that H will equal, if I multiply this, because remember we can say R over 1. So we can say it's R times H. Okay? That's going to give me RH all over R plus R squared. Okay, remember we still want R to be the subject of the formula, right? The capital R. This is a bit tricky. Okay, what are we going to do? Let's have a look here. Okay, remember we said we want R to be the subject of the formula. Okay, so what we can do is here is what we call cross multiplication. Okay, we can put the H over 1 and we can now cross multiply. This and that can multiply. So we can say 1, and what we can do is we can say 1 times RH, and we can actually put that on the left hand side. So RH there, and on the other side we have H times R plus R squared. You'll see this now will give you a much easier answer where we didn't have to do any sign changes. Okay, so what are we going to be left with here is RH equals, right, again we distribute. Okay, we're going to be left with HR plus HR squared. Again, we can take that over. So it's going to be RH minus HR equals HR squared. Okay. Right, you guys following? Again, there's your common factor R. We factorize it now. We're left with H minus H. Okay. Equals HR squared. And then again, we divide both sides by H minus H. Okay. H minus H. And there you have it over there. Okay. Therefore, R equals HR squared over H minus H. Okay, I didn't mean for this video to be so long, guys. Apologies, but I hope we all understood. The next video, I think I'll include a bit more literal equations, and then we can call that a wrap. Okay, until next time, guys.